Nobody gets you ready for Utah football more than the KSL Sports Zone.
Ready?
Kyle Whittingham and the Utes hit the road to Waco for a showdown against Baylor. Your home for the best coverage of Utah football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to talk some Ute football with the man who covers them for KSLSports.com, the one and only Steve Bartle. Hit it, Christian.
Covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Steve, what's going on, man?
Jake, Ben, how we doing?
We're doing terrific. Steve, I feel like the Baylor noise off the field over the last 48 hours has grown louder, maybe taking a little bit of a step back today. Do you feel like that's hanging over the program, or is it far enough aside that it doesn't really matter?
You know, it's interesting. So I just landed at the airport and was on the shuttle to the car rental spot, and sitting next to me were a couple of football folks, and they were actually talking about the Baylor situation. And so, it's certainly a hot topic of conversation right now. And, I have no real sense for what sort of impact it's going to have on the team. But, listening to Dave Aranda's press conference earlier this week, he started out that presser with, I think, 4 or 5 straight questions about that situation. And so it's certainly something that I think there's enough noise where, it could be a distraction, at least, in the sense of what I'm able to gather. But I have no real feel for what, the whole Mack Road situation is going to mean for Utah in the game tomorrow. But I do think it's certainly a hot topic of conversation, not only in the Big 12, but just, college football, in general.
What was the reasoning for tapping Harlan?
I think obviously his experience. He was just recently on the college football playoff committee 2 years ago in 2023, and kind of given the situation we're in, in where we're at in the season, right? We've already seen 2 playoff rankings, and we've got a month until the final rankings debut, and so to have somebody with that sort of experience obviously is a big thing. And so I think that above all else is why Mark Harlan was tabbed as the guy to fill that spot for the Big 12. And I think, talking just to some people, Mark's going to go about this the right way. He's going to put the conference forward. I think there's been a lot of conversation, maybe crashing out by some about Mark Harlan and stepping into this role and what it means for the conference. But I think Mark is going to put his best foot forward and do what's best for the Big 12.
I have watched Baylor, and they just don't seem particularly threatening. I get that they can move the ball through the air, but am I way off? Is this a more dangerous team than I'm giving them credit for? Am I underselling them?
No, it's an interesting, conversation with Baylor. I think Sawyer Robertson is one of the best quarterbacks, not only in the Big 12, but in the country. And when you have a quarterback like that, you're going to have a puncher's chance. But I think the rest of this Baylor team, outside of the passing game, it's just they've been hurt by injuries. They've lost a couple defensive linemen. The offensive line is a mess. And so there's just a lot of things when you look at the matchup between Utah and Baylor that point in Utah's favor. But again, like I said, when you've got a quarterback like Sawyer Robertson who's, playing as efficiently as he is while still being able to capitalize and create a lot of explosives, that's kind of the worry in this matchup is, Utah has been susceptible to the explosive plays through the air. And with Robertson and his collection of pass catchers, that's going to be a tough test. That's going to be the biggest test for Utah on that side of the ball. I think Utah is going to be able to get the ground game going. I think we're to the point where Utah's done it enough where the question is, can the opponent limit Utah's rushing attack? more so than it is Utah establishing it. That's just how efficient, how effective they've been in establishing the ground game. And so I think this is another favorable matchup for Utah on the offensive side of the ball. Now with Dave Aranda and Baylor having a bye week, and obviously Utah coming off a bye week as well, but with Dave Aranda, what sort of adjustments can he make defensively? That's going to be an interesting element as we get to tomorrow. I think Aranda and that Baylor defense did a pretty impressive job against UCF, which is a pretty solid rushing attack in their own right. It's not Utah's rushing attack, but they still limited them to pretty solid numbers on the ground. So I think that's going to be a fun test. But just in terms of the overall matchup, I think Utah's pretty heavily favored, and that's that speaks to just the totality of offensively, defensively, special teams. I think Utah's favored. It makes a lot of sense. So I think you're gonna have a puncher's chance with a quarterback like Sawyer Robinson. But I think you're fair to make the assumptions that you have, Ben.
Yeah, I don't think Sawyer's going to be on the field enough. I mean, we looked into those rushing stats, and Baylor just cannot stop the rush at all. So unless Aranda adjusts in new players, I mean, matchups, you talk about this a lot, Steve. Matchups in college football matter so much. I mean, there are teams that can limit Utah's run game. I just don't think Baylor's one of them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what we've seen this season is that the one team that could, have elite defensive linemen, and that's Texas Tech. And they've done that to a lot of opponents this season. And so, I don't think Baylor has the sort of defensive linemen. Well, I know they don't. They haven't invested in that defensive line the way that Texas Tech has. But again, just with Aranda and some of the things that he can do schematically, he's a brilliant defensive mind. I'm curious in that sense. But in terms of just the personnel, Utah fans should go into this feeling pretty optimistic, pretty confident about how Utah is going to be able to establish the run, especially with the emergence of Daniel Bray, the progress that Wayshawn Parker has made as a running back over the last couple of games. And then a week off, we saw what that did for Devin Dampier and, his athletic ability against Arizona State. And, is he going to be able to – is he going to have more of that elite athleticism we saw against Arizona State? That's going to make it even harder for Baylor to stop the run as well. So, yeah, I think when you look at this matchup, that phase of the game favors Utah pretty favorably.
What do you think about Wayshawn Parker's emergence, and I guess what it means for that backfield?
I think this has been part of the plan, right? Is limiting his touches, limiting the usage early on in the season, so that when you get to late October, November, he's in great shape. And you look at his workload to this point of the season. I think he's still under 90 carries, 87 carries if I remember correctly. And you look at where he's at in terms of rushing yards in the conference. He's top 10, but then you compare some of the rushing numbers in terms of his carries, rushing attempts, and it's he's 40, 50 carries short of everybody else in the top 10. And so I think this is where you're going to see a little bit more of Wayshawn Parker as we get into these final three games. And, he's really meshed well with this offense in terms of what they ask the running backs to do in the run game. He's a really great fit because he's able to run inside. He's able to get outside, and having that sort of back, hitting his stride in the month of November, that's a really exciting thing for Utah because he's now had back-to-back 100-yard games, and you look at the schedule, Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas, those three teams are in the bottom half of the Big 12 in terms of stopping the run. So when you're talking about Wayshawn Parker, what he could be capable of this month, I think he's at 600 yards right now. I think he's very capable of getting to that 1,000-yard mark.
Steve, if you had to read the tea leaves right now, how many teams does the Big 12 get into the playoff?
Yeah, I think they get two. I think the Big 12 I think they get 2. And I think the key for the Big 12 is going to be 2 former Big 12 programs in Texas and Oklahoma. You look at their remaining 3 games, they've got 2 ranked opponents, and then, LSU for Oklahoma and Arkansas for Texas. That's going to be the key for me can LSU, can they upset Oklahoma in the final week? If they do, regardless of what wins they get against, Alabama, I don't see that going their way. And then they've got Missouri, who's playing good football. So that's going to be the key for the Big 12 is Oklahoma, Texas, and what they do. But I think just on their own merits as well, with the way that Texas Tech has played, with BYU taking care of business, getting wins, regardless of how it's looked and how they've performed in the metrics, at the end of the day, it's a win-loss sport. And, BYU at 1 loss, they're in a good spot in terms of how they look right now. Utah playing great football, 7-2, and really hitting their stride. Obviously, the league is going to need help. And I personally, I think they're going to get help. I think there's going to be a little bit more chaos over the final month of the season. And I think the Big 12 gets 2 bids in.
Steve Witt just likes sunsets, or is he hinting at something else?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So Utah football posted a little clip of Witt, not necessarily enjoying the sunset, but obviously with the sunset as the backdrop. And I think just kind of given where he's at in his career, it was certainly interesting. And so, yeah, I asked him about sunsets, and he got a laugh out of it. But I think, we're all to that point where you see something like that and you're just like, okay, that's not nothing. Now, do we see something anytime soon? I don't know. I think Witt is, he's committed to this team. He loves this team. He talks about it all the time. He really enjoys coaching this team. He's having a lot of fun, and I think that's the thing for him in Utah is, he seems pretty determined to finish this season the right way, and then, we'll see.
How do you like Waco?
I'm staying in Dallas. I did Waco the last time we were down here in 2023. I'm also a little terrified to drive around in Texas. Within the last time we were here, within the first hour, we had a runaway trailer almost run us off the road, which was crazy. So yeah, I have I love the barbecue down here. That's where I'm headed right now. I just landed, and first place I'm going to is Goldie's Barbecue. So I enjoy that part of it. But the rest of the trip, I'm going to be dealing with a little PTSD, I guess, everywhere I go, worrying about the trailers, the runaway trailers.
Well, stay safe out there, Steve, and we'll be following all your coverage tomorrow. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
Steve. Thought you were asking if he was, like the Waco Siege. I didn't know where you were going at. Just the town.
Just the town.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never been there.
No?
No.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Baylor looks like
crossover before.
Yeah, well, I think fans around here are interested in actually the new destinations. A lot of people like to pick a road game or two to travel to occasionally, and the Big 12 destinations I don't think are quite as enticing as the Pac-12 used to be. But
Probably not as easy to get to.
Probably a little different, though, because I'm sure the Baylor atmosphere is pretty awesome. I mean, Ames isn't anything to write home about, but yet I bet an Iowa State game is pretty cool.
Texas Tech, Lubbock, cool stadium.
Right, a little different than going to, say, Seattle, where maybe the city is a little bit more of an attraction, even though the environment for Washington games is great.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit different. But I don't know, if I think of places in the Big 12 I'd like to cover a game or visit or whatever, like West Virginia is right at the top of the list.
Central Florida.
Not at the top of the list.
Yeah.
But Texas Tech.
Sure.
I mean, go see the Raiders throw around some
Manhattan, Kansas.
tortillas. I'd love to go to Manhattan. Now, I know several Kansas State grads, so I've heard good things about Manhattan.
Okay.
But again, that has more to do with like the university and the students and all that than it does the actual city. Whereas you go cover a Cal game or whatever, you're going to San Francisco.
Yeah.
We all know Jake's dying to get to Cincinnati.
Not particularly, no. Although
Big
Hans
Bearcats guy.
seems excited about it. Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Hans is excited for the Skyline Chili, which apparently is a thing.
Ohio, not one of our finest states.
No? I had a buddy who lived in Cleveland who loved it.
Bottom 3 of the 50.
What's the bottom one?
Florida.
Well, it's harsh on Florida. All right, stay tuned. The voice of the Cougs, Greg Wrubell, joins us next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Let's go! Complete game coverage of the Cougars is right here on the KSL Sports Zone. The Cougars return home for a battle against TCU. Your home for the best coverage of Cougar football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The Cougs going to try and bounce back coming up tomorrow against TCU. Let's talk to the voice of BYU, the one and only Greg Wrubell. What's going on, Greg?
Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. Good to be with you.
Appreciate you jumping on with us. Obviously, a very tough game last weekend. As you've been around the team some this week, how has the response been? This is something they have not experienced yet this year.
Yeah, they did experience it last year, though, and didn't have the best response to it, right? They went 9-0 after beating Utah, lost at home to Kansas, and then had a terrible first half against Arizona State. Were out of the game, got themselves back into the game, lost a one-score game, but it was the response to that first loss that really took BYU out of any shot of getting to Arlington last year. So they've been given the chance for a do-over, is what it comes down to, right? They know how it felt to lose a game after being undefeated last year. They've done that again this year. And then now can they avoid, the hangover that afflicted the Cougars last year in going to Tempe? The big difference this year, of course, is they get to come home for this next game. And they haven't been home for 4 weeks. It's been a long time. The Utah game was the last home game for BYU because you went road game, bye-week road game. So it's actually been a while. No better time to get home and ideally get a little bit healthier. The hope would be L.J. Martin is better, in his second week off the bye instead of the first week as he was last week, and they certainly need him to have a good stretch run. I think it's encouraging that Isaiah Glasgow and Jack Kelly looked like themselves again last week. And so the hope is for this 3-game stretch run, your best guys can be your best guys, and a lot of that is health dependent. And so, crossing fingers that the healing hands can do their work and BYU can have close to a full-strength group of their prime players for these final 3 games.
How do you think BYU matches up against Texas Christian this year?
Well, I do like the fact that, TCU's not overwhelming on the ground. I look at some of their recent rush numbers. This is the last 6 games. You see a 10 rushing yards. You see a 94, a 72, a 96, a 113. Good rushing game against Baylor, but that's 1 in 6 games, really. And so what that does is put it more on the arm of Josh Hoover. Well, we know what Hoover did to BYU in his first start for TCU 2 years ago in Fort Worth. He went for 460 and 4 touchdowns and threw the ball 60 times. Now, this year, BYU's pass defense is much better than it was 2 years ago. In fact, the Cougars ranked 13th nationally in pass efficiency rating defense. And so should this be a big throw game for Josh Hoover, I think BYU has the manpower to match up that way. And so from that standpoint, they appear to be strongest throwing the ball, and that's where BYU appears to be strongest defensively.
How do you expect Bear to react? I think what has been so amazing to me is that, and I've said this earlier this week, not just from drive to drive or game to game, I mean, literally throw to throw. He will throw an interception and then make the best throw of the game the very next passing attempt. I've been so impressed with his, ability to keep his head in the game.
Yeah, when you ask how he'll respond, I think it'll be how he responds to everything that's happened, good or bad, through the last 6 months, quite frankly. He's been, the word that comes most to mind when people talk about him is composure. You don't always get that for a true freshman, but you do with this guy. So, yeah, I don't expect him. I mean, clearly he was hard on himself after the last game. He felt responsible for the way things went in Lubbock, but they know that he's a bounce-back guy. He's going to be a bounce-back guy, and nothing really rattles the dude. And so you like that about your guy, and they don't need Bear to go out and win the game by himself tomorrow. But he's a guy that's proven that when a play has to be made, you want the ball in his hands. I like that about him.
I'm sure we asked you this at the time, Greg, so I apologize if I'm asking you again, but what were your expectations for the Bear at the beginning of the season, and has he exceeded those?
Well, second part of the question, yes. And the first part, I expected him to be eased into Aaron Rodgers' playbook, and that's exactly what happened. But what didn't happen was the the training wheels be kept on for too long. They came off rather early. I thought by the time BYU hit conference play at Colorado, the whole playbook was kind of open to him, and he'd already shown the ability to make line of scrimmage decisions that were the right calls. And so and you don't expect to be 8-0 with a true freshman quarterback. You expect a hiccup here or there, but they didn't come. You could argue BYU maybe didn't dominate teams, but they were winning games and doing it with a guy that was doing it for the first time at the P4 level. So, that part exceeded expectations. But there came a point once the training wheels did come off where you just thought of Bear as any other quarterback, not necessarily a true freshman quarterback. But, if you throw the scenario at anybody saying, okay, Jake Retzloff, your would-be senior starter goes out 2 months before the season and you're bringing in a guy that's never taken a snap at the FBS level, is that team going to be undefeated going into November? I'm not sure how many yeses you get on that, but that's where BYU was. And so not that they're exactly playing with house money right now, because, there's a lot on the line here the next 3 weeks. Clearly, it goes without saying. But the fact that they got to where they got with a true freshman quarterback, if you'd said, back in July or when training camp started in August, okay, we're going to have, Bear Bachmeier 9 games in, fully acclimated, and what you've got to do is you've got to win 2 home games and a game at Cincinnati, and we'll put you in Arlington. How about that? I think you would take that and say, let's go with it. And that's where BYU finds himself right now. Now, TCU is no slouch, and even the UCF season ender you can't look past. But, not a bad scenario to be in if you're BYU. And, again, they had this experience last year. They knew, going into their last 4 games, you go 3-1, you're playing in the Big 12 championship. You go 2-1, you're playing in the Big 12 championship. They didn't get there. This year, the task is a little taller. It's 3-0 in your final 3 games, but it's a doable thing. But it all hinges on tomorrow. Tomorrow's kind of the linchpin game. If you can beat TCU, a program that's beaten you 5 times in a row, if you can beat TCU, you can probably beat Cincinnati and UCF.
Going into these last few weeks of the season, the target on BYU's back grows bigger. The better teams find a way to take their game to the next level. Can JoJo Phillips help BYU add maybe another dimension or strengthen an already very strong positive they have on the offensive side of the ball?
The musical intro you had coming into my segment was Higher Ground from Stevie Wonder, and that's where BYU needs to get to in these next 3 games, and JoJo can be a part of that. I think people maybe overlook the loss of JoJo and what he might have brought to this team. I think Aaron was planning on having a pretty big season as a different kind of outside threat for BYU. Chase and Parker are super reliable, but JoJo was a different kind of player. You think about where BYU was last year with Keelan Marion, with Darius Lassiter, and with JoJo Phillips. And I'm sure there was a point last year where Aaron thought he'd have all 3 of those guys this year. Well, for most of this year, he had none of them. With Keelan going to Miami, Darius not getting an extra year, and JoJo being hurt. So I think the attack Aaron Roderick hoped to have, he had to really modify and adjust. We didn't see that yet. And so, how much can JoJo do? Well, we saw last week that we saw rust. We saw inconsistency. We saw a big drop at a big time, a guy playing his first game in about 2 months is what you saw. So the hope is he's shaking the rust off and he can actually be a lid lifter here over these last 3 games, because I think he was a big missing piece of this offense. And I think when it comes to missing pieces, guys, the Sione Moa absence maybe doesn't get enough attention. BYU's running back room took a massive hit, and he would have been a huge compliment to LJ Martin. He would have been the thunder to the lightning, and it would have created less wear and tear, I think, on LJ's body. Sione is a big loss, and not getting him back to this point in the year, that's one of the reasons BYU's been in so many of these battles. They've been winning games, but not really dominating games. And I think Sione was a force that could have helped to BYU to dominate out of the backfield this year.
Greg, if we had you on 10 years ago and you jumped on the show and you said, Jake, BYU is going to be playing a top 10 showdown in basketball in 10 years, I would have said, Greg, put the lid back on your Sharpie. I think the fumes are getting to you. How wild is that? 2 top 10 teams going head-to-head, college basketball, UConn, BYU tomorrow. That's wild. It's wild where things have come.
As Johnny Carson might have said, it's wild and wanky. And yet, I mean, everything changed when NIL came in without the guardrails, right? And Power Conference membership was the other, half of the equation for BYU. So, yeah, when you're toiling in the WCC 10 years ago, it would have been tough to see. You were still trying to just take care of Gonzaga and St. Mary's on a regular basis and hoping that the WCC can be a 2-bid league. And now you find yourself in an 8-bid league or a 9-bid league, and you can attract pretty much anybody that has interest in BYU the way the rules are currently. So, yeah, there's no way anybody could have foreseen our current environment 10 years ago, maybe not even 5 years ago, although it was starting to, maybe inch in toward this territory. The way that things have exponentially changed has changed the game for not just BYU, but so many other programs. And, yeah, it's great to be a part of it and attached to it and have these kinds of games. Of course, I won't be in Boston for the UConn game, but heaven knows there are enough big-time and big-name games for BYU all season long. These non-conference games that BYU is getting at these neutral venues, Villanova in Vegas, UConn in Boston, Wisconsin in Salt Lake City, Miami, Dayton, or Georgetown in Orlando, Clemson in New York City. And that just primes you for Big 12 play, where, yes, you're going to be in Lawrence, Kansas, playing Kansas. You're going to have Houston at your place. You're going to have Arizona twice. And so the big names just keep on coming. So UConn is the tip of the iceberg for BYU in terms of marquee opportunities. But, the more important game for Cougar Nation clearly happens at LaVell Edwards Stadium. UConn and BYU, that's mid-November basketball. It's a good game. It's a good RPI. It's a good a net rating game, let's say. But just one of many, many opportunities in a 35 to 40 game season. You get only 12 cracks in the regular season in football, 13 or maybe 14 at max, and it's a game of the year for BYU in football. And it's the next game of the year because last week was the game of the year, and now this week's the game of the year. And if they win tomorrow, Cincinnati's going to be the game of the year and the next most important game in BYU football history, because all these games really are, guys, with so much on the line, with Big 12 title and CFP in play. BYU's never played more important football games ever. And so tomorrow's just the latest, next, biggest, greatest game.
Before we leave basketball alone, I've been extraordinarily impressed with A.J. DeBonce's maturity. A lot of five-star freshmen come in and want to score as many points as possible. He truly seems to be doing whatever he has to that night specifically to put the team in a good situation to win, and they're 3-0. What have you seen from him?
Well, I've seen a parallel to Bear Bachmeier in terms of a guy that appears ready to do it at a high level. And it's a little different. Bear didn't come in with all of the national and international acclaim that comes with the career of A.J. DeBonce, playing, for Team USA for years now and coming in as the number one rated high school recruit by most sources in the country. That wasn't Bear's entry to BYU. He was well thought of. I mean, when Stanford signed Bear Bachmeier, it was a big deal. And he had a lot of big names after him, but it wasn't the A.J. scenario. But the common tie, guys, is the composure, the steady hand, the not phased. And A.J.'s been around this at such a high spotlight level for so long. It's just another year of attention for him, and he's handling it well. And I do think of him not just as a guy that's got to be, a 20-point-a-game guy or a 25-point-a-game guy, but a true playmaker. Whatever the play is to be made, he tends to make the right one, whether it's taking it himself or finding the open guy. That's who you want on your team, a guy that can dominate when domination is needed, but a guy that's not going to forget about his teammates and is going to make, generally speaking, the right play. That's how you get to be an MVP of an international tournament over the summer, is you make enough right plays over enough games against high-caliber competition that everyone observing says he was the most important guy on the floor.
Greg, we appreciate you jumping on the show. Thank you very much. We'll be listening tomorrow, and good luck keeping Hans in line. I know it's a hard job.
Thanks, Greg.
Well, I appreciate you guys, as always, for the invite, and, give Hans a poke in the ribs today for me, and we'll be seeing him and all of Cougar Nation tomorrow. Appreciate it.
I will not be doing that, Greg. No, I will not be doing that. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
See you, Greg.
All right, take care, guys.
There you go. Greg Wrubell, voice of the BYU Cougars.
I thought Greg might be taking his own private jet between TD Garden back to LaVell Edwards.
I think they're basically at the same time, aren't they?
I think one's at 5 and one's at...
Like 5:30.
Well, BYU's 8:15 tomorrow night.
Oh, is the basketball game at 5? Is it that early? I don't know. I was thinking they were at the same time for some reason.
So it's BYU and Utah. BYU basketball, Utah men's football.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Because David James was rattling off the calendar yesterday when we were watching the Jazz game.
I believe it. That's a DJ move.
David's like, first I've got to watch this, and then I've got to watch this, and then I've got to flip it back to this.
Right.
And
he just preps well.
He does. He mapped it out for all of us.
You have to figure out how
I
to
just
watch,
got it wrong.
Because it's on Fox Sports tomorrow? I don't think it's on Big Fox, is it? Yeah. It's Fox 1.
Oh,
Fox
give me a second
Sports,
and I'll tell you.
Big Fox? Well, that's good. I can switch between ESPN and Big Fox easily with my current setup. But, yeah, that's a great game.
Big Fox, yeah. Big Fox at 5 o'clock.
Man, going head-to-head with college football is not ideal. But, yeah, you're talking about the number 7 team in the country and the number 3 team in the country and one of the most highly anticipated players in college basketball in, several years. He's up there with the Zions and with the Cooper Flags of the world. So very cool to have A.J. DeVonta.
I'm going to be watching St. John's and William & Mary on True TV.
Good.
What?
Yeah, right. Catholic schools, right? Good schools.
Is William & Mary a Catholic school? I don't think it is.
I think I just assume if they have an actual name in it, I assume they are. I don't know why that's the case.
My grandmother went to William & Mary, and she is definitely not a Catholic.
Whoa. Outing your grandmother.
As not a Catholic.
Big deal.
You don't have to be Catholic to go to a Catholic school,
It's
but
not.
I do not believe it is a Catholic school, no.
I don't know why I thought it would be.
All right, stay tuned. We wrap up the show, wrap up the week. Coming up next, Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Nobody gets you ready for Utah football more than the KSL Sports Zone.
Ready?
Kyle Whittingham and the Utes hit the road to Waco for a showdown against Baylor. Your home for the best coverage of Utah football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two amigos on the airwaves, talking sports. They got him made Jackson on soul. Loves his tie guy, Ben's got style with his scarves. Oh my.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255, Peach Doors and Windows. Ben, can I run this by you real quick? I don't know why this story is bothering me, but it is.
Okay.
This is John Krasinski, the NBA reporter.
The Timberwolves?
You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. So
Not from The Office.
No. He threw out this quote on a podcast.
Okay.
Quote, talking about LaMelo Ball and why the Timberwolves did not select him.
Okay.
And instead selected Anthony Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
He said, quote, so we know they picked Edwards, but that's not my little nugget for you all. It's why they picked Edwards. There were a million different reasons in their evaluation, but one of them was that they had an interview with LaMelo Ball during this process, trying to figure out, hey, is this the guy for us? And LaMelo did not interview very well. One of the questions they asked him, hey, LaMelo, after you're done playing, what do you see yourself doing? What kind of things do you aspire to? And LaMelo said, I want to be president of the United States, unquote. Do you believe that Minnesota did not pick LaMelo Ball because of that answer?
No, I don't. I think, if I remember correctly, Anthony Edwards was the lock number 1 pick after about 3 weeks of college basketball. And if you remember, LaMelo did not even go number 2 overall.
No.
He went number 3 overall, correct? James Wiseman went in front of him. James Wiseman's a huge bust. But no, the reason he didn't go number 1 overall is A, because he wasn't the best player, and B, I don't know, do you think Anthony Edwards had the most mature answers either coming out of Georgia? Now, I love his progression on and off the floor. He has matured a ton. But you remember Anthony Edwards. I've said that. Anthony Edwards coming out of college was not necessarily Mr. Mature.
Yeah, I don't know what this reporter is trying to accomplish here. Is he trying to put LaMelo Ball somehow in the same conversation as Anthony Edwards? Because that's ridiculous. That isn't the reason that they didn't pick LaMelo Ball. There's no way.
There was no splitting hairs in that pick.
They are the dumbest people ever. And by the way, why would that answer raise a red flag?
Right.
Why is that a bad answer? I mean, I guess if he was mocking it in some way, but what if he was trying to get away and I'm no LaMelo Ball guy,
right.
But what if he was saying, hey, the sky's the limit. I have unlimited capability, both on and off the floor. I believe in myself. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of why it bugged me. Like, why would...
John's very respected as a writer. But I'm with you. I'm not really sure I understand.
I'm not putting the pieces together.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a little out of line. Not out of line. Not saying he can't report it. I just mean, like, what he's saying and what he's saying the result was doesn't match up.
If a 19-year-old came to me and said, hey, I'd love to be president of the United States someday, Ben, you and I both would be like, go get him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lofty expectation, but knock yourself out. I guess if somebody were mocking me, I'd be a little bothered. But, I don't understand why he's like, here's my little nugget for you. What?
I know at a previous stop in my career, the radio, Ennis Cantor came in and said what he wanted to do after he was done playing professional basketball was become a male dancer, a gentleman's club dancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's worse than President of the United States of America, and that's not even to criticize anybody who wants to do that. But
no, that is mocking.
I do want you to understand that, these kids have crazy answers. Yeah. These kids are weird because they've been 18 and they've been handed everything their whole life. Now, they've worked for stuff, but everyone says yes to them and thinks they're the coolest people of all time. So they all have wacky answers.
So, yeah, I don't understand.
I'm with you. That doesn't really make any sense.
That doesn't make it. That's not the reason they didn't take LaMelo.
That's not even close to the. That's probably not top 30 in the reasons they didn't take LaMelo Ball.
And by his judgment, that was the reason that somebody else did something. I don't know. It just bugged me. They took Anthony Edwards because he had incredible potential, and Anthony Edwards could have answered that question saying, "I want to rob liquor stores," and Minnesota would have still picked him.
Probably. LeVar Ball was a bigger reason they didn't draft LaMelo Ball than him saying he wants to be president.
Yeah, that makes zero sense to me.
I'm with you.
So why even say it?
It's a weird one.
All right.
That's a weird piece of info you get as a reporter every once in a while because I've gotten it too. And I'm not going to tell John how to do his job. He's sure she's better at his than I am at mine. But that you're like, oh, I got a piece of information. I have to find a way to share it. It's like, well, actually, is it incongruous with what you're saying? Is that the word I'm looking for? Does it actually, is there value to releasing that? And I don't think it has the value he's implying.
I don't either.
Yeah, weird.
All right, stay tuned. Hanson, Scotty G are coming up next.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Christian.
your football weekend. It's the Jake and Ben Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.